Welcome to the Bend Don't Break podcast. We are powered by The Source Weekly, Bend's locally owned newspaper. This podcast is our eddy in the rushing waters of local journalism. We are glad that you're taking some of your time to listen to us chat with the people who shape our local community.
Thank you to our presenting sponsor, RE/MAX Key Properties, a family-owned full-service real estate brokerage specializing in residential, luxury, commercial, new construction, and ranch and land properties. Their new state-of-the-art facility at 42 Greenwood Avenue is a modern, collaborative space and the new home of the Bend Don't Break podcast recording studio.
I am Aaron Switzer, producer of the Bend Don't Break podcast and publisher of The Source Weekly. Thank you for joining us today. We are joined by Marney Smith with the Amphitheater. Marney, what is your title? It keeps getting
General
bigger.
Manager.
General Manager.
Yeah, it stays the same.
We wanted to spend some time as the concerts are getting solidified and rolling out to talk to Marney about upcoming shows, but also her own personal evolution over at the shops and the amphitheater itself. So thank you for meeting us on what, for listeners, when you hear this, probably won't be as snowy as it is today, but we are right in the middle of our little snowmageddon this year.
It's pretty outside, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making it through the tundra to get here. Well, like I mentioned, you grew up here.
Yeah, born and raised.
Yeah, you went to Mountain View?
Mountain View Cougar, class of 92. Also went to St. Francis.
Okay.
And Kenwood, and yeah.
You mean McManamons?
Right. It's kind of fun to go back there and have a beer or two.
That's right. That's right. I can't imagine what that's like. That's funny. And then just kind of stayed and what originally before the amphitheater got its big training wheels and then lost them. What did you imagine you were going to be doing for a career? Like what
I grew up here, like we said. I graduated in the early 90s from Mountain View and went to college and went to work for commercial construction companies.
Okay.
So I traveled all over. They transferred me to various places throughout the United States.
Yeah.
And the thing that I didn't know how to verbalize at the time, but what I was missing is the community of Bend.
Yeah.
And this was a pretty small place when I
Right.
grew up. I mean,
Sure.
you could speed driving home from school and your parents had already received a phone call by the time you got home that you were breaking the rules.
Right.
But the thing that I missed was the friendliness and the connection that you can easily find in Bend.
Right.
And I'd try finding that in little places. I lived in Arkansas and Washington and Colorado and Texas and all over the place, and it was just not something I could recreate. So I moved back to town, which also coincided with the second year that the amphitheater existed.
Okay.
And at the time, we were very concerned that if we had an artist up on the stage at the amphitheater who cussed or spoke about their political beliefs, that it would negatively impact the sales over at the shops.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah. I remember. Yeah, I remember those times. When you, so it was the second year, but at the time, was it when it was still, it was a grassy knoll?
It was mostly dirt.
Okay.
But there was some grass.
Yeah.
The stage was 26 total feet tall from the grass to the top of the stage, and just a tiny little venue. First year was 3 shows: Lyle Lovett, Chris Isaac, and John Hyatt.
Right.
And then the 4th show was Coldplay.
Yeah.
And it was just dumb luck that they honored their contract after winning 5 Grammys. And they played. I remember they played for $60,000.
Oh,
which is unheard of. You can't even do the production for a tour for that much money now.
Yeah.
And they honored their contract and said that to this day I will always like that band.
Yeah. Well, I remember it put the amphitheater on a map because Coldplay, like you said, you got them before the rise. I remember being at that show.
So cold and rainy.
Yeah. And but it was like, I cannot believe that there's Coldplay in our community. I mean, I think the town at that time was probably maybe it had gotten to 60, 70 was I was going to say. And
they stayed at the River House. They ate at McGrath's Fish House. And it was just poor. You couldn't see any of the scenery, but he spoke about that show on Oprah. afterwards. And she asked him when he knew he'd finally made it. And he said he was playing this little town in Oregon, and the entire crowd was singing the lyrics. And he realized that they'd finally crossed the threshold.
Yeah, that's great. And then the Lyle Lovett, though, was that the first?
That was the first one.
Yeah. And I can remember being at the Lyle Lovett show, and the weather was gorgeous. And Lyle was up there, and you're in the venue, and you could see the mountains. You could see this beautiful pink sunset. And he mentioned it, about how gorgeous it was and how glad he was to be there.
Gives me goosebumps.
And I was like, this is going to be incredible. And you just kind of knew. It didn't take a rocket science. You were just standing there like, yeah, this is going to be a good thing.
Well, the music venue was always part of the master plan for the Old Mill District. And it accidentally ended up in the location where it is.
Yeah.
Where we'd originally, and I wasn't a part of this team at the time, but where it was originally planned to be, the sun was either going to be in the artist eyes or the guest's eyes, and so we needed to rethink it. But when the shops opened, the dust was blowing on that undeveloped land, and the quickest way to keep that from happening is to sprinkle it. And if you're going to bother to put water on dirt, you might as well throw down some grass seed and make it prettier.
Okay, yeah.
And then the promoters called and said, "Hey, can we do stuff on your grass?" And so it just organically became that location. But the purpose of it from the beginning was to essentially be a loss leader to get people to figure out what roads to drive on to come down to the Old Mill District, because it was always off limits. It was you had to have permission and a hard hat and a guide to come down here when the mill was active.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I mean, I'm dating myself, but I remember those Summer Sunday concert series when...
You're dating both of us, by the way.
Yeah. And we were the sponsor back at that time. And I mean, people still talk about those shows. It was such a nice, little Sunday. And they got to be huge for a day in the afternoon.
1,500 to 2,000 people.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. And that also was another indication this is going to keep growing.
Right.
It's hard when you're in there now to remember the Summer Sunday footprint, because obviously it's gotten leveled up and there's so much infrastructure around, but I still do go stand in that spot every once in a while and kind of spin around.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
So, I mean, and still walking down memory lane, I mean, what did you have fencing up when Lyle Lovett? I remember the fencing was such a big deal when
I
it
was in
finally
San
went
Antonio,
in.
Texas, so I don't actually remember if the fencing was up.
Yeah.
In 2003, May 25th, 2003 was the Coldplay concert, and that we did have fencing up for. But it was a slow process to have the capital essentially to add the different infrastructure.
Right.
For the venue, so it was just a little piece at a time that we were able to add to it.
Yeah, and there were growing pains along the way. I mean, I at first it was so flat, and anybody could see it from anywhere, and it became quite the thing.
And there was a lot of feedback from the community about escaping sound from the venue.
Right.
And so we built the berms.
Yep.
To try to create more of a bowl to keep it in.
Yeah.
And there was the misconception we were trying to control the river.
Yeah. You couldn't. There were people throwing anchors down on the islands in the middle, and
safe.
Yeah.
It gets cold. Make sure you've got it.
Right. Yeah. Right. But I know the artists would stand up on the stage and look around, and over in the amphitheater or over in the shops, it would be completely packed. It'd be packed on the river. It'd be packed on the grass. And obviously those people have dollars in their eyes as they're traveling around. They were like, "What is happening over here?"
Right.
So you had to respond to that as well.
We did, and that was in 2012 that we started closing that strip. We had, I believe it was the Norah Jones concert, but we had more people outside the venue across the river than we had inside the venue, and it's disrespectful to the artist for us to bring them in and then give away what they sell.
Yes.
So we just closed that few blocks of not river. Pardon me. Don't believe that. We just closed the few blocks of pathway on that side, so we could be respectful to the artists.
Yeah. So when you were your role, how did it evolve from you're doing construction and then you come back? It was your father was in the middle of this large development, Bill, and how do you go? Hey,
I didn't. It was a hot potato, and they said this thing is going to cause us problems. Catch, and I had no clue how to do any of that. I'm
I know you're self-made in that respect.
Construction. The first event, which was actually a private event, but I didn't even know to order porta potties. It was a disaster. But the at the time we also had a promoter out of Portland who was at the helm of most of the concerts. So they were doing the nuts and bolts, which gave me an opportunity to essentially learn how to do it. And from our perspective, from the old Mill District side, what's always been really important to us is the ability to talk to somebody, which is the same reason why we still have a box office that's open 364 days a year, so you can come down and talk with us.
Yeah.
But we just started taking more and more of the control of the operations of the venue back so that people had a local contact to talk to. And it's morphed into what we have now, which is all locally operated.
So the venue itself is never done. You've got more projects, and as soon as you finish one, there's another. What can people expect in the near future? What are your hopes for what's going to happen down there?
That's a big question. We're always trying to get new to us artists, and one of the most delightful challenges that we have is when we get an artist to come to Bend and they experience the magic of what is here.
Yeah.
They want to come back.
right, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack Johnson springs to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fronty comes back, and we do have, it's roughly half repeats and half new, but we're constantly trying to get the new artists. We remodeled the stage, added a ton of accessibility features. There's always improvements we can make in that realm. Right now we have our the VIP structures at the very back of the venue are temporary, and we'd love to build a more permanent version of that.
Yeah.
But that incorporated flushing toilets for people, not just for the VIP, for the whole venue itself, and that to me would level up the experience, and I think to a lot of folks. So that's primary on our list. But
Well, the rail cars have gotten quite an evolution.
they have. And for anybody who doesn't know, the artist dressing rooms are rail cars that were actually used at the mill itself, and they're quirky and tinier than the artist wants them to be, but they've got a lot of charm.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to watch is when the bands arrive. They've driven through town. They realize this place is small.
Yeah.
And to those of us who've seen it grow, we think it looks really big. But our venue and this town, to a visiting artist, feels small. Feels tiny.
Yeah, they're coming up from LA often.
And they if they don't know us, they assume that we're gonna not know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And they get off the bus pretty spicy. And it takes.
We know what we're doing. Look at the rail car over there that you got for your dressing.
Make me use that for a dressing room, and they see the stage, which to us looks big, but to them looks small. But then they meet our crew, and we've got an amazing. They're meeting the stage crew at this point, and most of these guys have been around since the early aughts. They're a phenomenal group of people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're also really nice and funny. And then you can kind of see the artist's shoulders relax, and they realize that this is maybe going to be okay. And then they actually go in the dressing rooms and realize how cool they are. And they meet Dean, our back of house manager, who is going to take them on a float if they want to, or on a beer tasting tour. And they realize it's going to be a really good day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
they come
want
down.
to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your, do you have a favorite artist who came through, or one who was particularly easy to work with?
When Fronty comes, he's got a level of integrity that is pretty hard to match. It's not unmatched, but he remembers the names of the stage crew, and he just has such a thoughtful approach to everything, and that's always I've always felt a lot of respect for that.
Yeah.
We have, I think there's two different kinds of artists: the ones who are there for you to see them be famous, and the ones who are there who realize that you've just spent a lot of money to come see them and be entertained.
Right.
And that's their job, to entertain you, and you can tell very quickly the difference.
Right.
So to call anyone, I think they all have really cool quirks.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
That's the ones. Who are there to entertain.
And he's made such an impression on this community because when he it's not just the show. Then he does, he'll go to yoga, he'll do volleyball, he'll go have fun in town, he'll stay a couple days. You always get the Instagram shots coming out of, oh my gosh, look who's here.
Jack Black did the same thing. Tenacious D, when they came, we gave him this list. We've got this concierge book which has really cool things to do in Bend. I'm not going to name specific names, but there's a brewer that will give you a curated beer tour, and
Yeah.
you can go road cycling with an Olympian, and they're just really neat things.
Yeah.
And he turned us down and then was posting pictures of the makeup girls at the counter at Macy's and like where he's hanging out with them. He just did random things throughout Bend, but had a blast.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. What are some of the bigger challenges you've had at the amphitheater? And I won't ask you to name artists, but you've had probably had some shows or some.
Weather's probably the biggest one, and just how to respond and get the communication out so people understand what's going on.
Yeah.
We've been, I think, really fortunate in that that's probably the largest
thing that you've had.
In general, the folks who are coming to perform are really nice. The guests arriving are nice.
Yeah.
Metal fans are the nicest. They're the spiciest online, but they're the nicest in person.
Right.
Yeah.
I know your stage has always been, I mean, it's a town and stage collaborative challenge, and that the town grows and then the stage has to grow and the artists you brought in. That's been a constant challenge too, is like, you've got to build this thing. It's made of concrete and steel.
Right.
And then you got to expand it,
I think we're pretty good where we are
Yeah.
now. We can get most of that. We haven't even come close to 50% capacity, capacity on the stage. So I think we're able to accommodate the majority of the tours who
Great.
want to come.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be getting a lot of the underplays that we do get.
Yeah.
Chris Stapleton shouldn't be choosing to come play in Bend. Sturgill Simpson probably
Yeah.
shouldn't be choosing to come play in Bend. Those acts are choosing to leave a lot of money on the table when they make the decision to make a stop here. But because of the reputation that the venue has and that the crowd has, they're making the choice to do that.
Yeah,
And so
that's fascinating.
The tours, and to our absolute delight, the tours are willing to compromise on some stage size.
Yeah.
It's not the height of the stage, but the size of it.
Okay.
In order to experience what it is to be at a show in Bend. And
Yeah.
when you go to some of these larger festivals, if you look at where the artist is and where the first guest is, there's often a 30-foot moat. And there's this giant gap and maybe some photographers in between, but not much else.
Right.
Here, there's 3 feet.
Right.
And the energy that the artist gets from performing and having a crowd that close is something that they don't want to give up, something to come back for.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, I mean, a lot of them, like, I'm thinking about Fronty, Phoenix. I mean, they're coming right out into that crowd. I couldn't believe that was unbelievable. I mean, all of a sudden, he's just
he walked on the crowd,
floating through the crowd right over my head.
The ab strength.
Right. Yeah. I mean, someone was holding his feet, and he's standing up on his feet and was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
That was really cool. And I thought, does this happen? Can this happen this can't happen at larger venues.
Right.
There would be no way for him to get through that moat. So
well, and we have a friendly community that it's translated into the crowd itself.
Yeah.
We and part of it is the types of acts that we are able to get at the amphitheater draw a friendlier crowd, but when the tours arrive, their security managers tend to keep a close eye on that and then make some calls about what the artist can or can't do based on the crowd. So
right.
to Ben's credit, a lot of the artists are willing to go out into the crowd.
Well, I've also been pretty impressed with, another show that stands out to me was the Beck show.
Yeah,
because
that was Phoenix.
Oh, yeah, that was Phoenix and Beck. The visuals that Beck brought to that amphitheater stage, I was like, how does that travel around? That screen was massive, and the video production was amazing.
That barely fit in our stage.
Yeah,
yes,
that's what I was wondering. Cool. It's like when they're coming with that, and they've probably required, this is my show.
Do you remember when Beck came back in? It was like 2007, and he did the puppet
show. Yeah, I do. Yep. Yeah. And they were at Victoria's Secret. Yeah. Remember they were walking
through downtown.
They went through the amphitheater. That was funny.
Yeah.
So what for you? I mean, what are the challenges that you find? I mean, now that you've got this thing rolling and it's, clearly doing well and is on everybody's radar. So what gets you fired up for the next season?
We have such an amazing crew of people and over 90% of our seasonal crew. We've got almost 800 seasonal employees that come and work between the bar and the house operations.
Yeah.
90% of them come back year over year. And we're leading in the industry for customer service. There's always room for improvement, so it's something that we're constantly working on. But that having a crew that's as phenomenal as the one that we have gets us all really excited. There's 12 of us in the office there year round.
Right.
And we talk about this all the time, but that our sustainability, we generated just less than a shot glass of waste per guest last year. We were at 88% diversion rate from the landfills.
Yeah. You got an award. You got an award for that, did you not? Yeah.
We did.
Who gave you that?
Well, we got one from Jack Johnson a couple years ago. We got one from Dave Matthews this
okay.
year.
Okay.
Live Nation in general.
So the individual artists will give awards for that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them do.
Well, that's got to circulate, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And our goal this next year is 90% diversion. It's harder. The closer you get to 100, each percent is a little bit harder to get. But last year there were a couple of vendors that had plastic forks that couldn't be composted. So
Right.
We're working on
that. Right. That's incredible.
And that I think makes us all really happy to figure out how to have a more sustainable version of what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, being wearing my other hat, we are in the event world, and I have had occasion to cross hire some of those folks. They love working for you. They love it.
Good.
You know, we're working with Winterfest with Corey, and she's so fantastic. And you know, I put the same kind of questions to her when we were just kind of hanging out before a meeting, and she was like, just so excited about the lineup, knew exactly who was coming, and I thought that is and for us, it's a one-time thing, you know, if they're going to work a festival and then it's going to be many, many, many months. But the fact that they're going to be doing this as frequently as they're doing it, and you know, events it's not easy labor, you know, you got to get up for those kind of things. And her enthusiasm was tangible.
Oh, good. Yay, that makes me really happy. You know, what we do, and you know this, and preaching to the choir, but if we're doing our jobs well, the guest who comes doesn't see the work that goes into it. You're not supposed to see the gears turn.
Right.
But what we're asking of people is to physically work really hard, mentally work really hard, and then do it for at minimum 8 hours. It's usually like 12 to 16 at a run for these concerts.
Right.
And it's if you're going to ask somebody to work that hard, it's pretty important that they have an environment that's fun to be in, and that they've got a team that they know supports them no matter what.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I remember about when your dad was building the shops, and we interacted with him obviously on many occasions, but it was always his attention to those smaller things. I remember him talking to me about the lights, you know, that were installed and how they were shielded and what the lumen, and they had to all be the same. And I was like, wait, all the same through the whole thing?
Which is still to this day
what we have. Through all the thing. And it was where I got this, you know, you quickly get the impression like nothing is beyond, you know, quality control here. And you can see that. You can see that in what you're doing. You can see that in the amphitheater. There's always that super attention to detail where I'm like,
we call it the dead geraniums. Pay attention to them.
Yeah, right. And you have that all that gorgeous landscaping, which obviously plays into that as well.
Millsite Landscaping does that, and it's always been a super big part of everything in the old mill, including the amphitheater. Say it with flowers is what my dad used to always say. So,
right. So what what is next? I mean, for people who are interested in the ever evolving, you know, amphitheater, what do you see 3-4 years from now?
I think so in the partnership with Live Nation, it has afforded us an opportunity to really invest in the people that we have, invest in the artists who are coming, and the infrastructure. So the incremental improvements that we were able to slowly make over the first 20 years, we're able to do a little bit faster now. Yeah. And again, bringing as many artists as we can who are new to the area. We manage all of the social media in-house. We read all of the emails, all of the comments. It's often me, but it's the rest of our team answering the phones, and we pay attention to the feedback. We care a lot. And
Well, I've noticed even you sometimes get on social media and respond to folks
they
there.
ask me not to do that.
I'm always shocked. And then people are just like raging back. And I'm like,
I got on Next Door and got yelled at by my team. Like, you can't do that.
right.
That is a bunch of not happy people.
Oh, I know. They're angry. I saw that. I saw that too because someone sent it to me. It was like, look. And I was like, oh no, she got in the pool at Next Door.
I didn't realize how quickly our team would respond to it and come tell me to stop it. But
I loved it though.
We take a lot of pride, and it's our goal to try to respond to folks. And what we definitely hear loud and clear is that people want metal music and they want heavier rock music. It's not always as easy to get. They play often indoors.
Yeah.
And the metal tours tend to come through at the end of the concert season.
Mm-hmm.
And we have had to turn down a couple that would have been phenomenal to have on the lineup, but they were the first day of school. And we are a venue in the center of town and have to be as cognizant as possible what our impact is.
It's so fascinating that plays in because, it is that sensitivity to the community. And a lot of times you think, oh, this is a Live Nation venue. They're not going to care one fig about that.
No, they care a lot. They care a lot.
Right.
And we do DB readings throughout the neighborhoods for every single show.
Sure.
I did not know until we booked an EDM band that EDM generates a bass wave not replicated in nature.
Oh.
And so it travels completely differently than any of the other types of music that we have. And I was getting calls from places that I didn't think I was trying to blame it on the lava tubes, which I still think might have a part to play.
Once it gets down in there and just starts going.
How can you hear this part?
Right. Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a growing musical form, so you have to keep an eye on.
It is they're fun concerts to work. Though I've always said that my least favorite concerts, my favorite bands are my least favorite concerts to work because you get to see maybe 5 or 10 minutes of the show if you're really lucky, but usually you're managing other stuff. But the EDM shows, many of the artists I didn't know, the whole venue dances.
Yeah.
You walk from place to place, the staff is dancing, the fans are dancing, the artist is dancing. They're just happy.
Yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. We are at the end of our time together.
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to say to viewers, listeners, readers about upcoming?
We hope to see you down at the concerts. We've got roughly half of them announced right now. So there'll be a number more coming.
I think the general vibe, and I'm not just saying, is that this is a good year. Everybody's like, oh, I don't know about the, people are pretty.
Comments on social media.
I try to just vibe it with who's in the office. I will say I love the fact that comedy has become such a base part of it too, because I love going to those shows and
I'm excited.
And even if I don't love the comedian, I love comedy shows because that's the whole idea behind comedy. Some of it you like, some of it you're like, whoa,
right?
But
that travels. That sound.
So I love it, and you've had some great people.
Well, we appreciate the support. Thank you very much.
All right. This has been the Bend Don't Break podcast. If you like what you heard, become a member and help us continue to do cool things like this podcast. And we get to talk to Marney and preview all these shows. So thank you. And thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Bend Don't Break podcast powered by The Source Weekly. To read, hear, and see more of what we do, go to bensource.com.